All right, let's dive right in. Today we're talking about something that's become absolutely essential in the world we live in: intercultural communication. The big question is, why is this such a big deal right now?
Well, it really boils down to this simple fact. Think about it. Whether it's for work, for travel, or just scrolling through your social media feed, we are all interacting with people from every corner of the globe. The old boundaries, both the ones on the map and the ones in our minds, are getting blurrier every single day.
So, what's really pushing this massive shift? It comes down to three main drivers. First up, technology and transportation have just completely shrunk the planet. You can have a video call with someone on the other side of the world like it's nothing. Second, our economy is global. The phone in your hand, the coffee you're drinking, it's all part of this huge, tangled international web. And third, people are moving around more than at any point in history. And to put a number on that last point, check this out. The United Nations reported 232 million international migrants back in 2012. Now that's a huge number on its own, but it's a massive jump from 154 million just about 20 years earlier. This movement is literally changing the face of countries all over the planet. And all of this leads us to the main point here. Because we're so connected, we are constantly, and I mean constantly, interacting with people from different cultural backgrounds. And if we want those interactions to be positive, to be respectful, to actually work, we have to get good at communicating across cultures. This isn't just some nice-to-have skill anymore. It's absolutely essential. Okay, so before we can even begin to talk about communicating between cultures, we've got to take a step back and ask, what even is culture? What is this invisible force that shapes so much of who we are?
At its core, culture is pretty much a group's shared way of life. You can think of it as the collection of everything that makes them who they are: their beliefs, their values, their traditions, the whole shebang. It's kind of like the unwritten rule book for a society, and it gets passed down from one generation to the next.
And if we look even deeper, we find what you could call the inner core of a culture. These are the things you can't always see, but they have a massive impact. A group's shared history, its sense of who they are, their deepest held beliefs and values, these are the foundations that shape everything else on the surface.
Now, this is a really important point. Nobody is born with a culture. It's not in your DNA. Every single thing, from how you greet someone to what you believe about the universe, is learned from the people and the world around you as you grow up.
All right, so we have a handle on culture. Now let's bring communication into the mix. How do we actually build that bridge from one cultural world to another?
First, let's just be clear on what communication is. It's the process of exchanging information using shared codes, like language or gestures or even the media we use. But pay attention to that last part, in a particular cultural context. That part is a very big deal. So, when you put those two ideas together, intercultural communication is exactly what it sounds like. It's what happens when people from different backgrounds with different unwritten rule books try to talk to each other. It's that intersection of two different worlds.
And you've got to remember this. Being good at this stuff doesn't just happen. It's not a natural talent for most of us. It is a skill. And like any skill, it takes conscious effort and practice to develop. You have to learn it.
So where do we start learning? Well, a good place to begin is by looking at a couple of basic mindsets that really shape how we see other cultures and our own.
So here we have two totally opposite ways of looking at the world. On the left is ethnocentrism. This is kind of our default setting as humans. The tendency to view our own culture as the normal one and use it as the yardstick to judge everyone else. But on the right, you have cultural relativism. This is the skill we need to build. It's about trying to understand a culture's behavior on its terms, using its own logic. To be a good communicator, we have to consciously shift away from the left column and toward the right.
This brings up another interesting question. If you wanted to really study a culture, to really understand it on a deeper level, how would you even go about doing that?
Well, researchers generally use two different lenses. The emic approach is all about getting the insider view. It's trying to understand the culture the way its own members do. The etic approach, on the other hand, is the outsider view. That's when an observer looks at a culture from a more detached, analytical perspective. Both are valuable, for sure, but they give you very different kinds of insights.
Okay, enough with the theory. Let's make this practical. How can you and I actually get better at this in our day-to-day lives? How do we build those bridges instead of walls?
It really comes down to these three key things. First, always look for what you have in common. No matter how different we seem, there's always a shared humanity there. Second, you have to actively fight against stereotypes and prejudice. It's a conscious choice.
And third, you have to work on being more flexible and just genuinely open to the idea that there are other valid ways of seeing the world.
And this quote just sums up the whole goal perfectly. The point isn't to pretend our differences don't exist, it's to realize that those differences don't have to be a barrier. In fact, they can be the very thing that makes our interactions richer and helps us grow.
So as we wrap things up, I'm going to turn the question back to you. In this incredibly connected world, building this kind of understanding isn't someone else's job, it's on all of us. So what's your next step going to be?